Let's talk about the ADL for a second. Yes, the same ADL that is partnered with TikTok in order to target any content creator talking about what's happening in Palestine and the genocide in Gaza. TikTok is on my ass. They have been on my ass. They have been targeting me hardcore because of my content about Gaza. And I'm getting really fucking tired of it. And I know that one of the reasons why they're doing that is because of their partnership with the ADL. Guys, it's really important that you understand the context of why this is happening and what they're doing. And I've got time today, so let's go over it. They're playing all kinds of games, taking videos after video after video down simply for just talking about it. Anti-Defamation League staff decry the dishonest campaign against Israel critics. ADL has only doubled down on initiatives defending Israel and the policies of the Israeli government amid criticism and staff resignations. The Anti-Defamation League CEO, Jonathan Greenblatt, sparked controversy in 2022 when he placed opposition to Israel on par with white supremacy as a source of anti-Semitism. Let's pause for that insanity for a second. Guys, Zionism is an ideology. There are Christian Zionists. There are anti-Zionist Jews. To conflate these things is insane. This is a purposeful conflation so that individuals, whether they are Israeli or not, whether they're Jewish or not, are not allowed to criticize the state of Israel and are not allowed to criticize the government's policies. Anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism, except it's not. Greenblatt said in a speech to ADL leaders, he singled out Students for Justice in Palestine and Jewish Voices for Peace as groups that epitomize the radical left, the photo inverse of the extreme right that the ADL long has tracked. What? That statement is fucking disgusting, okay? Let that sink in for a sec. He is comparing white supremacists, the people that marched and said Jews will not replace us, the type of white supremacists that wrote manifestos and attacked synagogues, he is comparing them to Students for Justice for Palestine, a student organization that simply advocates for the rights and the humanity of the Palestinian people, and Jewish Voices for Peace, a Jewish organization fighting against Zionism and the right-wing radical apartheid state of Israel. He is conflating those two things. I want you guys to understand how this is the type of thing that makes Jewish people less safe. When you're saying that criticism and critique of the right-wing psychotic genocidal government of Israel is the same as anti-Semitism, you are making Jewish people less safe. His remarks didn't only upset grassroots activists and Jewish groups critical of Israeli policy, it also set off a firestorm within the Jewish advocacy group. Some members of the ADL staff were outraged by the dissonance between Greenblatt's comments and the organization's own research, as evidenced by internal messages viewed by The Guardian. There is no comparison between white supremacists, insurrectionists, and those who espouse anti-Israel rhetoric. And to suggest otherwise is both intellectually dishonest and damaging to our reputation as experts in extremism. You know what? The person is right about that because you've destroyed your reputation. You have destroyed it. The ADL is meaningless now. The ADL used to do really good work in tracking anti-Semitism and white supremacist extremism. You have destroyed your credibility, destroyed it. When you conflate things that are not the same. And when you sit there and call everything I don't like racist, everything I don't like anti-Semitic, everything I don't like anti-Jewish, you have cried wolf, and now you have made it so that you have lost all credibility and authority on the issue. No one believes you anymore. That is making Jewish people less safe. Because when you cry wolf like that and call everything you don't like racist and anti-Semitic to shut people down, people stop taking you seriously. And more importantly, they stop paying attention to things that are actually dangerous and anti-Semitic to Jewish people. They meet it with a collective eye roll because you've cried wolf too many times. This is the same organization that when Elon Musk went on Twitter and responded to an actual white supremacist claiming that Jews were collectively behind anti-white American racism, and Elon Musk was like, that's really the truth. You know how the ADL responded to that? They first gave him a slap on the wrist, and then they met with him privately, and now they're working with him. Tell me how much you care about anti-Semitism and the safety of Jewish people when all it took was Elon Musk meeting with you for you guys to totally do an about-face and now partner with him as if he is not constantly perpetrating real anti-Semitism. A senior manager at ADL's Center on Extremism wrote in a Slack channel to over 550 colleagues, Others chimed in agreeing. The aforementioned false equivalencies and the both sides of them are incompatible with the data I've seen, a longtime extremism researcher said. The stated concerns about reputational repercussions and societal impacts have already proved to be prescient. Even before the latest Israel-Hamas war, which is already misleading framing because it's not a war, it's a siege on Gaza, the conflation of anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism has increasingly infected the debate around the bounds of legitimate protest, with the ADL playing a vocal role. Now news reports show a troubling surge of anti-Semitism, with bomb threats against synagogues and anti-Semitic graffiti. The ADL has said anti-Semitic incidents in the U.S. have risen 388% since October 7th. But its data is difficult to make sense of precisely because questions around how the ADL defines anti-Semitism. And tensions continue to ignite between Greenblatt and the ADL staff. At least 2 employees who spoke to The Guardian have quit in response to its overt emphasis on pro-Israel advocacy since the Israeli offensive on Gaza began, building on a pattern of departures from the organization. But the ADL has only doubled down on initiatives defending Israel and the policies of the Israeli government. Again, just like, soak in how insane that is. We're allowed to criticize our own government. A lot of us do it all the fucking time. Make fun of America. Make fun of the American government. Criticize it. Trash it. Say America fucking sucks and should burn to the ground and everything people have said about it. And that is allowed. That's allowed. We are allowed to shit on our own government. And yet, we're not allowed to criticize the Israeli government? I think the fuck not. It has welcomed a controversial congressional resolution that defined anti-Zionism as anti-Semitism, which is fucking insane that even happened. And it is called on law enforcement to investigate student activist groups for providing material support to Hamas. Is this a joke? Is this a fucking joke? Which the U.S. has designated a terrorist organization. Okay, so if you're advocating for the freedom of the Palestinian people, or even if you're just calling for a ceasefire and saying, hey, can you stop genociding all of them? That's providing material support to Hamas. Okay, cool story. So since we can just play games like that and just call anything we don't like a terrorist, I think that we should just all advocate to designate the Republican Party as a terrorist organization, providing material support to insurrectionists and people who don't believe in our democratic system. And then we can get law enforcement to investigate all of them. How's that sound? Critics of the group argue that these and other actions risk undermining the civil rights organization's counter-extremism work and say that the group has foregone much of its historical mission to fight anti-Semitism in favor of doing advocacy for Israel. Exactly. Like, that's a fact. They used to be an organization that would fight against anti-Semitism and advocate for First Amendment rights of people. They are now just a lobby for Israel. That's it. They're not fighting shit. They're doing lobbying on behalf of the Israeli government. If you are a regular person that gets hoodwinked by their commercials on TV that talk about advocating for LGBTQ rights and women's rights and the rights of black people, and, you know, they brag about how they fought against the Muslim ban and stood up for Black Lives Matter. Nonsense! They are just an arm of the Israeli government. The ADL said it could not make a representative available for an interview, but over email, a spokesperson said the organization will continue to work tirelessly against efforts that delegitimize Israel and vilify Jews. You got that? You got that sleight of hand? They're saying that the vilification of Jewish people, which is anti-Semitic and people should not do, is the same thing as delegitimizing the government of Israel. A current employee of the ADL, speaking on the condition of anonymity, which is understandable because look at how they're fucking coming after people, told The Guardian that the organization's conflation of anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism is damaging its efforts to counter hate. The ADL has a pro-Israel bias and an agenda to suppress pro-Palestinian activism. That is an employee of the ADL saying that. So you think there's not coordination between TikTok and the ADL to target people doing pro-Palestinian content on here? The Anti-Defamation League was founded in 1913 to fight anti-Semitism. It is an influential player in policy and media circles and is often called upon to opine and propose solutions to anti-Semitism in the U.S. Greenblatt joined as CEO and national director in 2015, taking the helm of its offices throughout the U.S., multiple research centers, education programs, community organizers, and lobbyists. The ADL earned about $76 million from contributions, according to its latest filing. Now, I know that a lot of their donations come from lobbyists and big money donors, but there are a lot of regular people that donate to the ADL. Like, a lot of people. There are a lot of well-meaning libs that think that they're fighting on behalf of civil rights, that think that they're standing against hate, that think that they're fighting for free speech. You're not. If you donate to them, you need to stop yesterday. Though the rise of Donald Trump and growing white nationalism shocked the American mainstream. Did it though? The ADL was prepared, having built out teams of researchers capable of plumbing the depths of the far right. In response to Trump's call for a database to track Muslims, Greenblatt said this proud Jew would register as a Muslim. You see, and that's the kind of thing that makes people confused, because they see what happened when Trump tried to do the Muslim ban and how the ADL stepped up, and they think, oh wow, they're awesome, they're fighting for Muslims. Not if you're Palestinian. Ready for this banger? But many civil society groups are increasingly reluctant to partner with the nonprofit. The ADL has facilitated trainings, oh my gosh, between the U.S. and Israeli law enforcement officers and allegedly spied on progressive and Arab American groups. What? The ADL settled the lawsuit stemming from the spying allegations but denied any wrongdoing. Are you fucking kidding me? In 2021, about 100 social justice and civil rights groups signed an open letter urging the organization not to work with the ADL. Since the October 7th attacks, the ADL has been working with law enforcement to crack down on college campus activism that it sees as anti-Semitic. They developed a legal strategy to go after branches of Students for Justice in Palestine and reached out to 200 university leaders, calling on them to investigate the group for allegedly providing support to Hamas, which the group vehemently denies. Of course, it's a fucking smear campaign. ADL has described grassroots calls for protests of Israel's military campaign as pro-Hamas activism. This and other recent activities have upset some of the ADL's rank and file. I resigned because I felt that Jonathan Greenblatt's comments were undermining my ability as a researcher to fight online hate and harassment. Stephen Ray, a researcher at ADL's Center for Technology and Society who quit the group in October, told The Guardian. As protesters led by the anti-occupation groups If Not Now and Jewish Voices for Peace took over the U.S. Capitol in October to put pressure on Congress and President Joe Biden to call for a ceasefire, Greenblatt called them radical far-left groups that represent the ugly core of anti-Zionism. Bro, If Not Now and Jewish Voices for Peace are both Jewish organizations. What? He is literally smearing Jews in this country who say not in our fucking name and calling them the ugly core of anti-Zionism and radical left far groups. In response, another ADL staffer left the organization. Those were Jewish people who we, as the ADL, were defaming. So that felt extremely confusing and frustrating to me, they told The Guardian. And it makes it harder to talk about it when any criticism of Israel or anyone who criticizes Israel just becomes a terrorist. That is correct. They are calling anybody who criticizes the genocide that the Israeli government is carrying out, or the far-right government of Israel in general, a terrorist. The precise contours of anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism are intensely debated. The ADL and many other Jewish establishment organizations have been pushing for years for the government to adopt the IHRA definition, which defines some criticisms of Israel and anti-Zionism in particular as anti-Semitic. I don't think that maybe they have any idea, or maybe they don't care, how actually unsafe this makes Jewish people. The Biden White House released its strategy to counter anti-Semitism in May 2023. It mentioned several definitions in its document rather than enshrining a single one. At the time, the ADL said it shaped the strategy, claiming that the White House had adopted the IHRA definition outright and described that as a victory. The ADL said in its statement that it does not conflate criticism of Israel, which is not inherently anti-Semitic, with actual anti-Semitism. Bullshit! We've just gone through a portion of this article where you're literally saying exactly that. But experts question whether its widely cited annual audit of anti-Semitic incidents does just that. Some fraction of those incidents, for example, are probably actions by anti-Zionist activists who are themselves Jewish, such as Jewish Voices for Peace. It contributes to a distorted view, said Ben Lorber, analyst of trends in white nationalism at Political Research Associates. Part of the ADL continuing to do valuable work in monitoring and warning against the danger of the rising far right, but increasingly that work is compromised by their reactionary approach to Israel. And that is correct. It is. There is serious anti-Semitism in this country. There is a lot of white supremacy and white nationalism that comes from the right. But because of what they're doing, because of their conflation with anti-Zionism and anti-Semitism and their attacks on pro-Palestinian organizations, they are trivializing and minimizing the actual threat of white supremacy. I don't think a lot of these people really have any fucking idea how much damage they're doing. The ADL and progressive groups have previously clashed over its support of anti-BDS measures and the Trump administration investigation into Palestinian rights groups. The Trump administration was already investigating and cracking down on pro-Palestinian groups, and for years, this is definitely not new, they have been attacking BDS groups. They've been attacking the attempts to try to boycott. They've been passing laws all over the United States making it illegal, which is unconstitutional. Sophie Elman-Golan, spokesperson for Jews for Racial and Economic Justice, believes that the ADL is responding to the rise of a progressive Jewish left that cuts into space the group has historically occupied. It is very threatening for institutions that have long been able to speak as the representative voice for the Jewish community to now be faced with such an undeniable set of loud, persistent, and consistent Jewish voices that are directly counter to what they're saying, she said. The group's spokesperson wrote by email that Greenblatt has long said that anti-Semitism from the far right is like a hurricane bearing down on you right now. And anti-Semitism from the left is like climate change, where the temperature is slowly increasing. After October 7th, we're at the point where the global warming is turning into a storm is now hitting us too. At the same time, Greenblatt has sought to win over and appease certain voices on the far right. Wait, I thought you were concerned. In late November, Elon Musk endorsed an anti-Semitic conspiracy theory on X. Major companies pulled advertising, and the White House condemned it as an abhorrent promotion of anti-Semitic and racist hate. Greenblatt criticized it on a podcast, but the next day he praised Musk after the tech CEO said that tweeting the controversial protest chant "From the river to the sea" would be deemed a violation of X's terms of service. So if it's not clear how full of shit he is, I hope this settles it. Musk goes on and says something that is legitimately anti-Semitic, a legitimate anti-Semitic conspiracy theory. And Greenblatt barely criticizes him for it. But then Elon Musk, who is so full of shit, free speech, we're all about free speech, I'm a free speech absolutist, bans the phrase "from the river to the sea," and all of a sudden Greenblatt's his fucking bestie. Several dismayed ADL advisory board members threatened to quit their posts, and this week, according to reporting in Jewish Currents, an executive resigned over Greenblatt's praise of Musk. The flirtations with Musk might seem particularly bizarre, especially given the two men have a history of feuds. But it's actually in line with the ADL's general approach, which is to try and stay at the table with the people in positions of power to try to coax them into a better place. According to an internal email from Senior Vice President Adam Newfield, viewed by The Guardian, you know what that sounds like? What they've done with TikTok! Jonathan was encouraged by Elon's tweet saying that calls for extreme violence against the Jewish state, such as those calling for decolonization of Israel or saying "from the river to the sea," are a violation of the platform's terms of service and will result in suspension. The ADL spokesperson said, "This is the right approach, and Elon has laid down a gauntlet that other social media companies should follow." Oh, okay, got it. So it's fine for people to promulgate anti-Jewish conspiracy theories that claim that Jews are trying to replace white people in America, so long as you partner up with the ADL and do exactly what they tell you to do. And I also like this 1984 upside down fucking propaganda that they do, where they're like, oh my gosh, calling for decolonization is violence. Saying "from the river to the sea" is a violence, while Palestinians are currently being ethnically cleansed. Like, that's the level of fuckery we're dealing with. This is the mind fuck that they're doing. Israel right now is literally being violent to the Palestinians, is literally doing a genocide to the Palestinians. But then they say, chanting slogans about Palestinian freedom and using words like decolonization is somehow violence. So the violence isn't violence, but the rhetoric is violence. Got it. One major concern is that the ADL is looking at the threats facing Jewish communities and Jewish students in a vacuum, separate from other forms of hate. We see anti-Semitism as sort of this connective tissue or the entry point into other hard-right ideologies. Susan Cork, who directs the intelligence project at the Southern Poverty Law Center, said, "It's woven within these other hate groups and extremists that we cover. When there have been surges of violence in Israel and Palestine," Cork explained, "there has been a similar uptick in anti-Semitic and anti-Muslim incidents and violence and hate crimes." Yes, but you'll notice that they don't seem very concerned at all about the violence that has occurred against Muslims. Remember the Palestinian boy that got murdered right after October 7th in Chicago? You know, the imam that just got killed in New Jersey? Where you fucking be, ADL? So some college student says from the river to the sea, and all of you guys fucking crying, call the ambulance. But there are actual Muslims getting killed in this country, Palestinians, like the boys in fucking Vermont that got shot, and you guys are nowhere to be found. Like, be fucking for real. Greenblatt said that the recent hate crimes against Muslim, Palestinian, and Arab Americans must be unequivocally condemned, and the spokesperson said the organization has regularly advocated against anti-Muslim hate in recent months. When? Where? Who? What? Nonsense. But the ADL's renewed emphasis on Israel advocacy in its work against hatred may preclude it from partnering with civil rights groups to address growing Islamophobia. The watchdog, according to Lorber, is using the crisis moment to advance its long-standing agenda. This is very important. We need to draw awareness to what the ADL actually is and what it's doing. They have already co-opted Twitter. They have already co-opted TikTok. We need to expose what they are doing. Not only are they full of shit and they're not actually advocating against hate, but this organization and their leadership and what they are doing are actively making anti-Semitism worse and making Jewish people less safe. Spread the awareness, share, repost, talk about it. Don't stop talking about it. They're trying to intimidate you and silence you. We cannot allow them to invisibilize and dehumanize the Palestinian people any fucking longer.